Hey guys, I got a blessing to share with you today. Got a new rifle, and that's the Weatherby 307 in a 280 Ackley improved. I've done quite a bit of shooting with it and adventures in reloading along the way. So that's the topic of today's show. Welcome to the podcast, where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics the right way with God Almighty at the center. Biblical Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I guess for the bio today, of course, first and foremost, I'm a Christian. I've done a lot of rifle shooting. Been blessed to do a lot of rifle shooting, as you might tell from the bio, bullet points in the show notes. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I've been hunting a long time. I've been hunting out west a long time. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country. I have some really nice rifles that I've been blessed to have and shoot. And I have some really good hunting rifles, but I've never had what I consider like a premium top tier hunting rifle. I have some really good workhorse hunting rifles I use guiding. Really good, like blue collar, down and dirty, hardcore hunting rifles. I have some really nice tactical rifles. But I didn't have what I would consider like a premium high-end hunting rifle. I grew up a poor boy in the South. Grew up hunting with a bolt action and a, break open single shot shotgun, and eventually got a rifle. But they were generally like tools, and I consider guns tools primarily. Like I'm a private security contractor as my primary breadwinning job to put food on the table. And I make my way in this world by God's grace with the Bible and a gun, and have most of my adult life in one way or another. I see them as tools primarily. I enjoy the beauty of a gun. I enjoy the artwork that can be on a gun. But I primarily see them as tools, either to protect myself and society as a whole, because you shall love your neighbor as yourself, or to put food on the table, which I really like doing. Sure, I could go to the store and buy, ground beef wrapped in cellophane, and I do that sometimes, but I much prefer to slay a beast and put it on the table for myself and my family. And I don't apologize for that. Guns are tools for me to do that, and I have good tools for that. But again, I've kind of always wanted that higher end, nicer rifle. Not that I needed it, I wanted it, and I admit that this was a want. And we've had a lot more work than people recently at the private security contracting, and I've been working a lot of overtime. I'll be honest, I'd rather have the time off, but since I don't want to hurt anybody else, I step up and work the extra hours. And since I've got the money, by God's grace, why not spend that on something that I'll enjoy using? So, growing up, I've talked about this for a while too. Growing up, kind of the two high-end rifles that I thought of were Browning and Weatherby. Weatherby was like in its whole other class, but Browning and Weatherby. Those were like the high-end, like what the upper crust hunters, like the people in magazines and stuff hunted with, right? So I was wanting one of those. And I've wanted like a hot rod hunting rifle. I've talked about that in the past. I'm a spot and stalk and still hunter, a tracker. That's how I like to hunt. I've hunted all different ways. There's a lot of effective ways to hunt, but that's how I like to hunt. I like to spot and stalk and track and still hunt. If I sit still for more than 15 minutes, maybe I'm sleeping, right? Or maybe like I hear an elk coming in and I'm like, oh, I got to wait another 5 minutes because I hear it coming. But I don't generally like to sit still. That's not how I like to hunt. And I've done all the long range like fidget spinners and range finders and all the stuff. I don't like that. I like max point blank range. I'm not a purist, but I like max point blank range system. It's simple. It's fast. I like to shoot standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. I don't like all the giant apparatuses and fidget spinners for men and all the accessories. I like man, rifle, by God's grace, pinned against the animal and putting meat on the table. So I like max point blank range. And for that, hot rod cartridges kind of have an advantage. I've recently did an episode on the 280 Ackley improved, so I'm just going to briefly mention that's what I settled on. It's got a much better max point blank range than things that I generally hunt with, 308, 30-06. Which, if you're, on the East Coast or whatever, that probably doesn't make much difference. But for me, it does. It can make a significant difference. Now, I still shoot a lot of animals inside 100 yards, but I shoot a decent minority in the 200 to 300 yard range. That longer max point blank range is an advantage. Not necessary, obviously, but an advantage. And for the rifles, I was looking at the Brownings, and I was also looking at some like semi-custom ones, but I was mostly looking at Browning X-Bolt and the Weatherbys. Both push feeds, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but for this, that was kind of my choices, right? I'll be honest, I went largely with the Weatherby because it was made in America. Brownings are Japan, Portugal. Nothing wrong with either one of those countries, but right, if I was looking at both seem like very good rifles, why not go with the American-made one, even if it costs a little bit more? And I don't want to be a hypocrite on that. I own a lot of stuff that's made in China. Half my duty gear that we get issued is ironically probably made in China, right? So a lot of the stuff that I have is made in China. But when it comes to rifles, I tend to favor American-made stuff. Call me crazy, but I like American. And Weatherbys are made in America. Weatherby's historically known for their Mark V actions. I actually played with one of those. I actually didn't like the Mark V action. It was pretty big and clunky. Now, to be fair, I tried the 9-lug and not the 6-lug. But I was like, I'm not crazy about the 9-lug Weatherby action. And they also have the Vanguard, but that's not that's a good rifle, but not what I consider a high-end rifle. Right? That's their entry-level rifle. I'm sure it's a good rifle. They also have the fairly new to Weatherby, the 307, which is an improved 700. I like 700s. I'm familiar with 700s. I've hunted successfully with 700s quite a bit, actually, but I've never been super happy with the 700. The Weatherby 307 is an improved 700. Some of the issues that 700s can have, the extractors breaking, stuck cases. They gave it a much beefier extractor. The bolt handle snapping off, literally. Not the biggest fan of that. Weatherby 307 is a bit different. The, old Remington 700 triggers that gave them so much trouble that caused them all that, trouble and lawsuits and all that stuff. They don't use that trigger. So an improved Remington 700. Nothing revolutionary as far as the basic design goes, but the small improvements make a big difference. A better extractor. So if I'm going to have a push feed, I'd like a much beefier extractor than a run-of-the-mill 700. I looked at the different ones. Again, I like to spot and stalk in hills, still hunt. I live in the Rockies. Right, I can cover some, by God's grace, ground in a day. I can cover some miles and a lot of elevation, gain and loss in a day. And I like to carry the rifle in my hands. I consider that hunting. I have a sling on my rifle often, but that's for navigating technical terrain where if I fall, I die. And shooting is not my primary concern at that point. Climbing up cliff faces or whatever. Then I'll have a sling on the rifle. But in general, I like to have the rifle in my hands. I like to walk around with it in my hands or, at the ready. And for that, a light handy rifle is really nice. That narrowed down my options. So there is a model called the Weatherby 307 Alpine CT. Not exactly sure what that stands for, but it's their carbon model. It's got a carbon fiber stock and a carbon fiber barrel. This is also going to be my first carbon fiber barrel gun that I've owned. I went back and forth on this, making this choice for a long time. And I got this rifle. I should mention I mounted it with a massive, for me, I generally hunt with LPVOs, but a massive 3-9, which is funny because that's not massive at all. But the reason I went with that is because it was a Trijicon AccuPoint, and it's a 1-inch tube. If they'd have made a 2 to 7 1-inch tube, maybe I'd have went with that one if they would have made something else. But a lot of the other scopes are 30 millimeter, 34 millimeter, giant obese abominations. Not my favorite, even though they're fairly light, Trijicons are. But I went with the Trijicon 1-inch tube 3-9. And if you care, I went with Leupold backcountry rings. I got the rifle set up. I bought one factory load for it. Factory load shot okay, nothing great, above MOA. And and I'm not the one that says you need a sub-MOA gun for hunting. But if I'm going to spend, this is the most money I've ever spent on a rifle, and that includes a SCAR-17, because when I bought the SCAR-17s, they were way less money than they are today, because, the value of the U.S. dollar has drastically declined. You got to adjust that for inflation, right? If I adjusted them for inflation, it wouldn't be. But as far as actual money spent, like U.S. dollars spent, it's the most expensive rifle I've ever bought. So I wanted it to shoot really well. So I started reloading for it. Now, I don't know exactly how many loads I tried, the factory load, and then some of these loads maybe I loaded up and didn't like them and didn't try them, but I was on load number 19. I got one or two loads to shoot under MOA. I think I got one to shoot 0.7 MOA. Not super happy with that. Normally, I'd be ecstatic about that. Run-of-the-mill hunting rifle, fantastic. But this, again, was going to be like my premium high-end rifle. And I have, a pump-action Remington 760 that I've gotten to shoot with load number 3, under half MOA. I've got a Ruger 77 guide gun that are not known for, they're known for rugged reliability, not necessarily known for accuracy, that I just shot in one hole. I don't even remember the measurements, but it was teeny tiny, very small. I don't know. I'd have to go look it up, but it was remarkable how tight a group that thing shot with factory ammo. So I wasn't super happy with that. I tried some Nosler Partition 140 grain, tried a bunch of different loads with those. That was as heavy as I wanted. I actually wanted lighter than that. But I figured that's the lightest partition they make. I like partitions. I'll try it. I think I got one load to shoot under an inch. And then I tried some other bullets. I tried at least a couple different TSXs, which I generally like those. I couldn't get any of those to shoot what I would call particularly accurate. It was about this time that I thought I'd better try some different stuff, and whether it was, I don't know, because there's too many variables, right? But here's some things that I did when I wasn't real happy with the way it was shooting after, maybe a dozen loads. I followed the manual, which is something that I generally do, but I think I damaged the crown of that rifle, but I did it following what the instruction manual told me to do. It told me to, the 307 manual said to push a cleaning rod through from the breech, obviously, and push it through and then pull it back with the brush, which I never do. I usually push the rod through, take the brush off, and gingerly guide it back through. I don't pull the brush back through. Well, I could literally see where I had damaged the crown of that rifling. I could visibly see that with the naked eye. It's like maybe that has something to do with it. So I've recrowned guns before, right? I'm a fairly competent gunsmith, and I had a recrowning tool. I recrowned the muzzle. So I cut it once, and I wasn't real happy with it, so I cut it again, recut the crown of the rifling to where it looked pristine. So I did that, and I also redid the action screws. When I got it from the factory, I didn't mess with it, but the way the action screw said to do it in the manual, I was like, that's not the way I've ever done it before. I did it the way I'm used to. So I redid the action screws. Real simple, thing to do. It can make a big difference. I did that, and then I also bought some 101 grain Hammer Hunter bullets. I've heard good thing about Hammer bullets. I've never used them, but I've heard good things. These are like lathe-turned copper bullets, 101 grain, which I wanted a hot rod hunting cartridge. I am much more confident in lighter bullets in copper than I am in other traditional bullets. And so I got some Hammer Hunters. These are, again, premium bullets, but this is a premium gun. They're not cheap, but I got some of those, and I also bought some Varget powder, which is some of my favorite go-to powder. I was trying to use other recommended powder in this rifle, like IMR 4350, but I found some. Hammer was the only one that I saw that actually listed factory load or listed reloading data for Varget powder. And I was like, man, if it doesn't shoot good with Varget, I don't know what's going on. So I bought some Varget, I got the Hammer bullets, and I worked up a load. And it was like the first two loads with the Hammers shot really, really well. And I was like, I think if I tweak it a little bit, so I forget if I went up a half a grain of, I think I went up a half a grain of powder or so, right to just below, if my math was correct, because they list a starting load, and generally that's 10% under max. It was something like a tenth of a grain under the max load. So still published data, but on the high end. So I got the 280 Ackley improved, the Varget powder, the 101 grain hammer bullets at just under max, which is right around, and it's the same length barrel. I don't know because I don't own a chronograph right now. I don't have possession of one. Actually, I guess I do technically own one because I just bought one, but I haven't gotten it yet. And that was from all your guys' wanting me to get a chronograph. I've used them in the past. I generally don't bother with them, but because I'm not a super long-range hunter, and I'll generally just shoot my gun at whatever distance so I get the actual data. Because even with a chronograph, you got to double-check that. You can't just be like plugging all your numbers and assume that it's going to hit, because it's just that, an assumption. Like, oh, my data says this, so I'm going to hit here at 500 yards, so the first time I shoot at 500, I'm going to shoot an elk at 500. No. No, not that you should be doing that anyway, but you have to actually know where your gun shoots at that distance. You have to actually go out on the range and shoot that at an actual target. Otherwise, you don't know. You're just guessing. That there's too many variables there. Where was I? Chronographs. But I've got the same barrel length as the data in the book, which should mean that, and I'm just under max, like a tenth of a grain. So I should be right around 3,700 feet per second. That is screaming fast. That is a hot rod cartridge. And with that, I was getting good results. I thought if I tweak it a little bit, I might get better. And with published load, 3,700 feet per second, right around there, and it shot under half MOA. It was like 0.4 something MOA, which is fantastic, right? That is fantastic. I am super happy with that. And to give credit where it's due, I'm a patron of Ron Spomer. I like Ron Spomer. I disagree with him on some stuff, but I agree with him. He knows a lot about specific niche things that he's got more experience in areas than I do. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But he came out with a ballistic calculator. I'm a patron of his on his Patreon page as a ballistic calculator. Maybe you can find it if you want it. But it's a good calculator because it lists max point blank range. Like him, I am very much a fan of max point blank range. And that gave me a max point blank range of over 400 yards. To give you an example, one of my general go-to rifles is a Ruger Scout, Ruger Gun Sight Scout, the old control round feed before they went to the hashtag #MeToo plastic push feed. Let's make another cheap plastic push feed rifle. The older one, the stainless steel control round feed, rugged, legendary action, I like that gun. So I'm using it as an example, but it's got a max point blank range of in the 200-ish yard range. This rifle, which I think weighs less, has a 400-yard max point blank range. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that's 400 yards away I would necessarily shoot at, because, again, I like to shoot standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. I have to be able to reasonably call my shot to know that I'm going to make the shot. Just because I can shoot at something doesn't mean I should shoot at something. Those are two completely different things. But that max point blank range is impressive. That is a hot rod cartridge, which is what I was going for, and a very nice rifle. So now, by God's grace, because all that I have is a gift from God, right? I couldn't draw a single breath without God. I wouldn't have another heartbeat without God. All that I have, that He lets me, have a job and have resources and have not only like enough food for the day, but enough extra resources to get some things that I want. That's a blessing, and I'm very blessed to have this rifle. I'll be honest, I was a bit frustrated after like a dozen loads that I wasn't happy with, but I'm very happy with this rifle now and this load. Took some trial and error before, but a big takeaway from this for you guys, hopefully you guys are learning from this, is don't give up, right? Don't give up on a rifle. Don't get, if you think it's got potential still, try the simple fixes first. Stick with your better judgment. I know better than to pull a cleaning brush back through a barrel, but that's what the manual said. And I was like, the manual probably knows best. I probably should have just done what I always did, which is, go from the breech only, and then anyway. So I should have known better there. But then also checking the action screws. How hard is that, right? That's just a good, easy thing to mess around with. I didn't do this, but I was also fairly confident that those rings and that optic were not moving at all. So I'm pretty sure it wasn't the optic. That would have been another thing I could have tried. But simple things first, simple diagnostics first. But don't give up on the rifle. I am super happy with that rifle now. It is lightweight. It is a hot rod cartridge. It shoots well. It's light enough that I can shoot offhand because I'm not interested in a rifle that shoots really tiny groups that I have to shoot off a bench or off a tripod or a bipod or some other giant space age apparatus that I have to lug up a mountain. Not interested. This is a good rifle that I can shoot from the shoulder. It's a very nice. I'm very blessed to have this rifle. I don't want to take that for granted. God blessed me with a good rifle. A very high-end rifle, too. Like the kind of rifles I dreamed about when I was a kid. I have a Weatherby rifle that shoots really well. With a really good load, right? 100 grain Hammer Hunter at 37-ish 100 feet per second. That's screaming. One of the reasons I chose a 280 Ackley Improved instead of a Magnum, which you could argue whether it's a Magnum or not, is that it's very efficient and the recoil is not bad. With or without the brake, it's not horrible. With the brake, it's very enjoyable to shoot, actually. This rifle came with a brake. But especially with those 100 grains, even at that velocity, it's very pleasant to shoot. I enjoy shooting it. That was some of the sage advice my wife gave me. I was talking to her about, wanting a nice rifle and talking about this rifle versus that rifle. Not that she cares that much, but she likes talking to me. Thankfully, she's my wife, right? We like to have conversations. That's important. And she was like, get the one that you'll enjoy shooting the most. And that's sage advice. Sometimes your wife knows you better than you know yourself, right? And that's true because I get one, unless I get a bonus tag, I get a deer tag, maybe two, and an elk tag every year, right? So that's not a lot. But I like to shoot a lot, as you might imagine, as you might know if you listen to the podcast. I like to shoot a lot. So her advice of get the one you're going to want to shoot the most, that's really, really good advice. And I really like shooting this rifle. I like dry firing with it. I like shooting with it. And hopefully I won't mind carrying it up and down mountains. A rifle that shoots really tiny groups with match ammunition that weighs 10 pounds, okay, that's fine if I enjoyed shooting off a bench and that was it. But if I want to haul that sucker up a mountain and stalk up, behind an elk in a snowstorm and take a shot from a standing position, not super practical. So it's a great rifle. And the moral, some takeaways for you guys hopefully is the big one, as always, God provides. Some other ones, don't give up on a rifle if you think it has potential to be a good rifle. You work out all the stuff first. Don't just get fed up with something. Have some grit, right? Have some stick-to-itiveness. Use some common sense. Work out some issues. And I just wanted to do this episode because I did a lot of work with that rifle, and I thought you guys might be interested in it. Hopefully you guys gleaned something from this episode. Now, something I do want to point out is I'm not saying that you need this rifle. I'm not saying that you need this rifle to come hunt out west. I have been hunting out west for a long, long time. And I'm just now getting this rifle. And again, it's not a need. It's a want. So this is not me telling you. This is not me trying to be some, gun pusher, social media, gun tube glitterati saying, you need this rifle, you must have it. Oh, the FOMO. If you don't have it. It's a nice rifle. I'm very blessed to have it. But don't think that if you want to come hunt deer or elk out west or whatever, that you need this rifle. If you want one and you're blessed with the resources to get one, get one. It's a good rifle. I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with the ammo if you want to try hammer bullets. I've not shot an animal with them yet, but the accuracy is impressive. I like the 280 Ackley Improved, but don't think that you need one. But if you want one, you have the resources and you want to get one, man, go for it. But I didn't want you to think that I was telling you need this to come hunt out west, because obviously I've been hunting out west successfully for a long, long time and taking all kinds of animals, and I'm just now getting it. And again, it's mostly a want, if I'm being honest. But it's really nice sometimes to get something that you've wanted maybe since childhood. Anyway, with that, guys, I appreciate you. Oh, you know what I should also mention? The carbon fiber barrel. I said it was the first gun that I've owned with a carbon fiber barrel. It is kind of nice, especially going back to my wife's advice, get something that you'll like to shoot the most. I have some really good lightweight rifles, like a Kimber Adirondack. It's even lighter than that. It's like 4-point-something pounds. It's great to carry, but I can only generally shoot like 2 rounds through it, which for a pure hunting rifle, guide rifle, it's pretty good for that, because hopefully you don't need more than 2 rounds, right? Especially not like precision rounds. Follow-up shots are generally pretty hasty. So, where was I with that? The carbon fiber, and now this sample size 1, but the carbon fiber seems to be very consistent. Like from the first round to the 4th round, like it doesn't tend to move a lot when it's heating up. I did notice that, and that is really nice. And again, my wife's advice, get the one you'll enjoy shooting the most. I like that I can go shoot a string of rounds through this and shoot a bunch of rounds through it in a day. Right? It's not like a pencil barrel, which I generally like for hunting, but where I have to shoot it, 1, 2, 3 times and let it cool down for 30 minutes. This gun and that barrel is very consistent. Even with the loads it, quote-unquote, didn't like, we're talking like 1.5 MOA. We're not talking like it was just flinging wild rounds, which some guns do and some will do. It shot everything pretty close to the same point of aim, point of impact, which is impressive. So that carbon fiber barrel, at least I only have the 1 sample size, but I like it. I'm not saying you need a carbon fiber barrel, but I really enjoy having it. It's really nice that I can shoot longer shot strings. Okay, now with that, didn't want to leave that out there. With that, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all that you do. If you want to become a patron, I would appreciate the support. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. That is going to lead me to the tactical tip of the day. Loctite, blue Loctite, is often a shooter's, one of your go-to companions. It's like right up there with a Dremel, right? A Dremel and blue Loctite, they're like staples of the diet of, an avid shooter, gunsmith, whatever. But blue Loctite, you can have too much of a good thing, or you can have too much Loctite. You look like, a little, baby in one of those high chairs trying to eat mushed peas. It just gets everywhere, it gets all over everything, and makes a mess. Hopefully you get that analogy right. Like, more is not always better. A little tip is, if you've got those, I guess a regular Q-tip would work, but a, wooden dowel Q-tip, you have a clean cut, and if it's got 2 sides, you just cut it, so you just have the shaft of the Q-tip, and you put a little bit of Loctite on there, and then you can put that into the screw holes. Then you can take a little cleaning pad or whatever, or a cloth, paper towel, wipe off anything on the outside so that you don't get a bunch of, let's say, splash of blue Loctite in between stuff that can cause problems. Or just be a pain in the butt to clean when you go to switch parts out. So putting that little bit of blue Loctite, like a drop or two, and then dropping it in the thread holes, into the holes, instead of putting it on the screw. One, you'll use less Loctite, which is not a big deal, but it adds up. And another one, it's just less messy, and it can give you, if you put too much Loctite on something, you can actually prevent stuff getting in contact, which is the opposite of what you want. So putting that Loctite on the, the shaft of a, I guess you could use a toothpick too, but a Q-tip or something like that, and putting it actually inside the hole in the threads instead of on the screw, that can be better sometimes. So that's your tactical tip of the day. Your tactical verse of the day. One that comes to mind when I talk about measurements, because a lot of people get emotionally invested in cartridges or velocities or their pet cartridge. I try to be fair and consistent. That's important, right? A verse that comes to mind: you shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and a just weight and a perfect and a just measure. Right? That is biblical. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.